Before we get started, I just want to say that I really am sorry about this, but I made another shell challenge. In case you're not familiar, the idea of a shell challenge is that I build a weird box of a building in The Sims, and it literally is just a box, and then I put that box on the gallery for you all to download and try to turn into something. It's called a shell challenge because the only rule is that you have to keep the shell of the building the same. So you can add and do pretty much anything with these shell challenges. The only thing that you can't do is change or remove these existing exterior walls. The idea being that the shell of the building stays the same for everyone. It's kind of cool because I might make mine into a cabin, but maybe yours is an ice cream shop and somebody else's is a museum. And maybe I built mine in Newcrest, but yours is in Strangerville. And despite us all having the same box to start out with, they all turn out super different. So this is the shell that I made this time. And I'll say it, this one is kind of rough, okay? Normally we do bigger shells than this, like it's usually 2 stories, which poses a different sort of unique problem. But this time I wanted to do a tiny house. So this lot in total, I think is only 45 tiles. It is really, really small, which gives you a lot of limitations on how much you can actually do with it, because there's really not that much space. When I said earlier that you could pretty much do anything except add or change the exterior walls, I really wasn't kidding. When we think about these shell challenges, the rules are kind of just that you can't touch the walls. You can like put the place on a foundation, you can make the walls taller, you can rotate it if you want to, you can put it on a different lot, you can add platforms, you can obviously add like roofs and windows, you can do a floor plan inside so you can build interior walls, just not exterior walls. You can even add half walls, because in my mind, I feel like a half wall is very similar to a fence, so it's not really the same thing as like adding a wall to the building. I feel like it sounds kind of complicated, but really the only rule is that you can't move the walls, right? Because we want the shell to be the same for everyone. If you want to download this and do it yourself, it's called the Simsie Lil Shell on the gallery. Like Lil Simsie, but Lil Shell, because it's a tiny house. And you can post it to the hashtag Simsie Lil Shell when you're done so that I can see it. So with those explanations out of the way, let me show you how I tried to tackle this one. Also, this little blob back here, that is in fact a cat. So if you see it moving at any point, don't be alarmed. She's just sleeping back there. I feel like when she's just behind my head like this, you might think she's a pillow or something, but it is a cat. Anyway, let's get started with this build, okay? Because we have a lot to try and figure out with this one. So with these shell challenges, you can literally do anything, and that's kind of the whole point here, is that I want everyone to try and take this in totally different directions. I also kind of wanted mine to be a house because I kind of liked the idea of building a tiny house, but you totally do not have to do that. When I say it can be anything, I mean it. It can be anything, but I chose to make mine like a little tiny cabin in the woods. I really wanted to try and build an off-the-grid house, which basically means that in-game, if you have that off-the-grid lot challenge on, your Sims don't have any power or any water in this lot. That's a base game feature. You can set the lot challenge like underneath the lot traits section, but they added a bunch of stuff that might help you if you have eco lifestyle. In eco lifestyle, there's like water collectors and solar panels and stuff like that where you can try and collect power and water so you can use it. But in this particular build, I didn't have any of that. I wanted this house to be completely off the grid, like using candles instead of generated electricity, which poses some interesting challenges when it comes to building it, obviously, because we couldn't use like real lights or anything like that. So instead of ceiling lights, there's candles everywhere. Instead of a stove, they've got a grill outside and like a fire pit and stuff. I also used a lot of wood on this building. You can see I have like the log cabin sort of exterior. The whole inside is wood. It's like wooden walls and wooden floors. But don't worry, there's a couple items that work off the grid even when you think they might not be meant to. Because like obviously you need to shower and stuff, and if we don't have running water, how are you gonna do that? So there's, I think, a couple of the cheapest items do technically function off the grid, but if you use the handiness skill, there's a couple things that you can craft plumbing wise. So pretty high up in the handiness skill on that woodworking table, you can actually craft a toilet and a bathtub. So I use those 2 things here in the little tiny bathroom, so your Sims can still bathe and like pee here if you need to, but they just are kind of kind of wooden. It seems more like a bucket than a toilet, if I'm being honest. Like I don't really think that you can flush it if you know what I mean. But it does work. So like your sim could live here and it would totally function. It would just be kind of difficult. I also actually gave this lot the simple living lot challenge, which combined with off the grid is a nightmare because basically in simple living, you have to have all of the ingredients that you want to cook with. So like if you don't have a fish in your inventory, you're not grilling fish for dinner. If you don't have flour and eggs, you can't make cake, stuff like that. They added this when we got cottage living because they made that whole like grocery shopping feature, but I wanted to do it because I really like the idea of your sim living out here and like trying to live off the land. There's water right nearby, so they can try and catch some fish, they can try and grow plants that they can eat. But I think realistically, this lot is probably not the most ideal to be doing simple living, especially if you're off the grid. Simple living is more appropriate for like living in a big farm or something, because then you can have like cows and chickens and stuff. We don't have any of that. We just have forest, so it's gonna be rough to play in, but I kind of liked the storyline of it. So right now we're just doing all the landscaping, and I did a lot of landscaping on this build. Obviously the house itself is not very big, so there wasn't a lot to do inside, especially because we can't put like any electronics or anything like that. I mean, it's like a chair and a bed, you know? But outside, I really wanted it to blend into the environment and feel kind of overgrown and like it's actually a cabin in the woods. I built this house in Copperdale, believe it or not, which is the world that came with the high school years pack. There's this little 20 by 20 lot kind of in the bottom, and it looks really secluded out here. There's like water nearby and a bridge and stuff, and so I wanted to come live back in this area. And then I used a bunch of the debug landscaping that came with high school years to try and like match it up to the surrounding areas. There's a lot of like low-lying grasses and little white flowers and stuff, and then also some rocks, so I tried to copy all that and then put it out here. I'm actually kind of obsessed with how it turned out. I really like the landscaping on this lot. The outdoors kind of makes the whole thing. Eventually I'll add in a bunch of stuff like outside for us to actually use. Things like the fire pit, the grill, I put a picnic table, I put a telescope, there's like some planter boxes and stuff. Obviously when you're living here in this lot, we kind of need to rely on the outdoors and like the activities that we can do outside, because there's not a lot that you can do inside except for like read. Well, read and sleep. You can read and sleep inside. I actually did put a couple things indoors. There's like a fireplace and stuff. Obviously, I'm picturing your Sims living out here, and you're gonna need to have a fireplace to heat the house in the wintertime. I don't know if I've played off the grid much recently for real. I don't really know what happens in the wintertime. Does your Sim like freeze inside? And do they get super hot inside in the summer? I would assume so, because you can't put a thermostat. It's not like you've got central air in a house like this. I need to play off the grid again. I feel like I really want to try and do simple living stuff again too with cottage living and like have a bunch of farm animals and try to survive, because I really love that style of play. This particular house just doesn't really lend itself that well to it. This will be kind of hard to do that with. Where are you gonna put the cows? The cow's barn is bigger than the house, to be honest. This little tiny cabin is smaller than the barn that comes in cottage living. Do you know what? I didn't actually put a bush here on this lot. That came to mind because I was thinking about how you can woohoo in the barn, by the way. I realized that barn to bush is like a very confusing connection, but I didn't put a woohoo bush here. I probably should. Because realistically, like, I mean, you've got a bucket as a toilet. You'd probably need to pee in a bush sometimes. And then you could woohoo in the bush. Because I put the bed up against the wall, so you can't woohoo in the bed. And there's no shower, so you can't woohoo in the shower. I should have put a bush. I don't know what I was thinking. This is like the one time it actually makes sense, too. I feel like I use that woohoo bush all the time, and it makes no sense where I put it. This time, it actually makes sense. Well, the build's ruined. But anyway, I'm putting down a few other like useful little items now. I'm probably gonna regret this if I ever play on this lot, but I also put laundry here because if you've got the laundry pack, there's like two ways to do laundry. There's a washer and dryer kind of vibe, and then there's also a little bucket and a clothesline. And you can use the bucket and the clothesline, obviously, if you're living off the grid, because we don't have a running water for a washing machine. And I just kind of liked the idea of having my Sims doing that, but like, living here is bad enough, you know? You've got enough to worry about. You gotta go catch your own fish to survive, as if you've got time to be washing clothes. But I still put it there because I kind of liked the idea of it. It just felt kind of cute and kind of realistic to me. I live streamed this build on my Twitch channel first, and somebody in chat was like, oh, I think playing off the grid is boring because like, what are you supposed to do all day? Survive? You've got to do so much work to live in these houses, especially with that other lot trait where you have to like find your own food. When I like imagine myself playing playing in houses like this, I don't think of my sim having a job, you know? Like, I think my sim is gonna be here all day trying to like cook and clean and garden and paint and stuff. It's not like you need money. You don't have to pay for anything. Oh my gosh, just talking about it is making me want to play in it so bad. I'm like so inspired to play with this right now. But speaking of my Twitch channel, now's probably a good time to plug it. I actually built this live on my Twitch stream a couple days ago. I build a lot over on my Twitch stream, so if you're interested in coming to hang out and like watch this sort of thing live, because then you can actually give like realistic live feedback. I mean, maybe if you were there, you would have gotten me to add in a woohoo bush, but you weren't, so I didn't do it. Me trying to like twist the blame around onto you, no, it's my fault. I failed there, I'm sorry. But I'll link my Twitch channel down below if you want to come follow us and hang out over there. I'm also actually gonna do a live stream where I tour your shell challenge builds in about a week. So if you're planning on trying this shell yourself, make sure you post it to the gallery with that hashtag #SimsieLilShell and then come by to my Twitch stream that day. We kind of do like a randomizer to pick the names that we tour, because that way I can get through as many people as possible in the most fair way possible. But I'm also gonna make a YouTube video touring some of your shells. It's always so fun to do this. I just think shell challenges are so cool because I love seeing how different they all turn out. Like, I built this little log cabin. I guarantee you somebody else built like some alien house. I bet there's community lots. This one's small enough too where you could use this as just like the bathrooms of a park or something, and you could just have this be like way in the back and then do the rest of the lot as something else. I mean, there really are endless possibilities with shell challenges, and I just think that's so fun. I feel like it's so cool to get to showcase the creativity of the community and everything. And you know what else? I think that I learn a lot too from doing the shell challenges, because there's always these items that people use that I see them using in builds and I'm like, oh my god, I've never thought to do that with that thing. And I feel like we get ideas from people. It's just a cool community building activity. And this one is pretty small, so hopefully it's not too intimidating for any of you that might want to try. We've definitely done worse shells. I mean, small ones have their issues too. They're kind of hard to roof. It's hard to fit stuff in, but it's definitely a lot harder to do the big ones. Don't underestimate how bad it is trying to place staircases. I have caused myself so much pain in these shells before. The times that I've put basements in them were the biggest mistakes of my life, because obviously when it's a shell, you can't move the basement, right? And so I placed the basement there, but then I'd be trying to do the staircase and it like doesn't fit anywhere. It's such a different way to try and build in this game, because normally, oh, it doesn't fit, I'll just move it. But with a shell, you can't. So you're just stuck with where it is. It's so difficult. So just consider yourselves lucky that I didn't put a basement here, because I've been known to cause chaos in these. Last time we did this, I left interior walls that you couldn't delete. Like, imagine if I just put like a random diagonal wall in the middle of this room and I said, oops, you gotta keep it. That's what I did last time. So this one's easy by comparison. I'll link the last build down below if you want to go and watch it, by the way. But anyway, right now we're furnishing the bedroom. So I'm trying to put in some useful clutter that I think might be nice, kind of combining like clutter items with like also functional stuff for your sim. So I put an easel there because I figure the poor person needs to have a hobby so they can paint or something. We obviously have a bed. There's like some little suitcase items that are actually a dresser from the werewolves pack. I put a bookshelf. I'm also trying really hard to use those little lanterns inside because we can't put real lights. It's such a different way to go about building, because normally I just use those little tiny saucer lights everywhere and I put like loads of them because I love when the houses are very bright inside. But then in this build, there's no electricity, so you can't use those lights. They just wouldn't work. So we have to try and use candles. When you're building, there's like a functional off the grid tab in build mode, so you can kind of go through there and see what works. So I was trying to use all of those things. I had like candles everywhere. I put shelves everywhere so I could try and put candles up on them. Also, once you light the fireplace will give a lot of light in the living room, so that'll help. But yeah, I was really scrolling through that functional off the grid category just to find anything that I could fit in here. There's a couple items. If you think that it looks like it might work off the grid, it's usually classed that way. Like that laundry day sink that's like metal and has some storage underneath it. That one works off the grid. I think the wooden bathtub and toilet are kind of an obvious example as well. So I got to use those. In the living room, I kind of tried to make it look like I had a kitchen. I was a little bit conflicted on how I wanted to do this because obviously this room is very small, right? And I really wanted it to seem very cluttered and very lived in and really cute, but I also didn't want to have a real kitchen. Like, I didn't really want the Sims to be cooking with a stove. Technically, one of them does work off the grid, so you could like bake and stuff here, but I think I would have preferred if your Sims mostly grilled their food, or at least, I mean, I'm making this for me, right? So I was kind of picturing them using the fire pit and the grill outside as like the main cooking, but I did want to have some counters inside in case you wanted to try and make a salad or something. And so I have a sink, a counter, and then a little fridge, because there's this kind of like icebox looking fridge that comes with cottage living, and you can use those fridges on off the grid lots. You can't use all fridges, but some of them work if your Sim adds ice to it. The way that like water and plumbing works off the grid is your Sim has to like get water. So you could click on like the water that's nearby your house. In this case, there's like a pond, and you could click like collect water, and then your Sim can use the sink and stuff. In the same way that you could frequently add ice to the ice box, and then it'll keep food cold in it. It doesn't last that long, obviously, but it is like technically functional. Oh, speaking of like technically functional, but probably don't need, I put a desk in the corner in here. This is the thing, right? In The Sims, there's not really any use for a desk unless you've got a computer or like a kid who needs to do their homework, because no adult Sim is gonna sit there and like write something. They just don't do that, right? But I put a desk in here because I think in real life they'd probably have one. Like they might, you know, journal or something. Your adult Sims don't need to do that in this game. Your kids might need a desk to do homework and stuff, but your adults don't need it at all. I put one there though because it seemed kind of realistic to me, and I liked how it was kind of antique. I feel like in this cabin there's sort of a combination of like antique, maybe thrifted furniture, and then also stuff that my Sim would have made. So it looks very obviously handcrafted, like the bathtub. So I kind of liked that antique looking desk. And also there's not a table inside, so your Sim could like eat there if they wanted to. They could sit there and eat. But yeah, there's not really a need for the desk. Technically, they're not gonna use it. There's not really space here to have a kid, even if you wanted to, so they aren't gonna be here to do homework. And you can't have electricity, so even if you wanted a computer, you couldn't have one. Which actually reminds me, there is like a typewriter looking item in the game that comes with cottage living, and some people in my Twitch chat like suggested that I add it, but the thing is, that typewriter doesn't work off the grid. It looks like a typewriter, but it functions like a computer. Like it works the same as any other computer, so you need electricity for it still. So it would have been kind of cool, like it might look interesting in this like older styled house or whatever, but it also wouldn't work at all, so I didn't put it. The off the grid thing is rough, let me just tell you. It makes it really hard to live in this place. We're just kind of doing some last minute touches though. I'm putting in some furniture, we have like some firewood. I also put in some knitting stuff, so there's a yarn basket. I think that kind of fits into my like living off the land play style. Like it would be kind of cute, I think, for you to like, you know, knit your own clothes. Although if you're playing with the simple living lot trait, do you need to have wool to knit? I don't remember. I know that you can get like the llama wool and use it for cross stitching and stuff, but do you need to? Or will it, oh no. You know, this might not work. There's no way to have any farm animals. I don't know if this will work. We'll have to do a live stream maybe and like play in this and try and actually do it, because I think that could be kind of fun. Well, anyway, the point still stands. I just tried to put like hobby stuff in here. You know, they've got yarn, they've got an easel, they've got a bookshelf. Good luck. You can try and make it work, I guess. But we're getting pretty close to finishing the whole build here, so I'm gonna pop back into the game and I want to give you a tour of the finished product. It can be kind of hard to see when I'm spinning the camera around so much. So if you'll recall, this was the original shell. Obviously, I rotated it, I put like a floor plan, I moved it to a completely different lot, but this is what we started off with. Super weird shape, very difficult to roof. It has this weird like beak almost. I built this lot in Copperdale, which is the world that comes with high school years, and it's over here on this little Falls Nook empty lot, kind of in the bottom. In the end, it only cost 23,669 simoleons, by the way, so it's like basically a starter home, which is impressive considering how much landscaping is out here, but also the landscaping's all debugged, so it was free. You could literally delete this one telescope and then it would be a starter home. But anyway, this is the finished build. I am absolutely obsessed with the outside and the landscaping on this. So in the front, we have this kind of little pathway leading up to it. We've got an old mailbox. There's a bunch of flowers everywhere. These little things that look like weird little squares are actually like VFX for in-game. This one is fireflies. So in live mode at nighttime, there'll be little fireflies there. Kind of around the side over here, I put these planter boxes. We also have this woodworking table so your Sims can craft furniture. This is where I put the laundry. My Twitch chat was laughing at me for putting this clothesline underneath a tree because it's in the shade, but I don't really care. It doesn't matter. It's just the Sims. And I thought it looked cute there. So we have laundry. actually. There's kind of this little like dirt patch where we have like a grill. I put a picnic table. This is actually a cooler and it does work off the grid, so your Sims can get quick meals from there. And then we have a couple extra planter boxes for more plant growing. And then over this little pathway, I've got a fire pit, so your Sims can like sit here and roast marshmallows and stuff. And then I also put a telescope just in case you want your Sims to die. But it's also kind of nice for skill building and like having a hobby, because again, we don't have any electronics, so you can't watch TV. So you can watch the stars instead. In the front here, I put some more planter boxes. These are vertical planters. I put these here because they're under cover, so they'll still grow in the winter time and stuff. And then when you actually come inside, very small living room, okay? But we have this little entryway in the front. It's got some aprons, it's got some mail. Over here is the kitchen. It literally has just one counter that you can use, but it has the ice box, kind of some storage. We have this cool sink, cleaning supplies, stuff like that. I put a lot of these shelves around so that I could put candles everywhere, because then it would hopefully seem not as dark in here. This back area has a little desk nook. We have this cute fireplace. I put some like fake board games on a coffee table. Your Sims can't actually use this, it's just clutter, but it looks kind of cute. They can knit in this chair over here. And then through this way is the bedroom. It's kind of dark in here, but I think that's okay because you're just gonna sleep. They've got a bed. They have like some fishing decor. I love this little paint corner too with like the canvases and stuff. And then they have a little ensuite bathroom. It's really nice, as you can see. We have this really fancy toilet and tub. I tried to put some decor too, like this soap bar. There's like some cleaning supplies in here too. They even have towels and a mirror, so good for them. But that's the entire building. It's really nothing fancy. I mean, it's sort of the opposite of fancy, actually. This is how it looks at night, by the way. I love how these lanterns look. I just thought it was so cute. It's really cozy inside too with the candle lighting. But that, my friends, is the finished build. I am so curious to see what you turn your shell into if you wanted to try and do it yourselves. You can already see on the gallery on our hashtag #SimsieLilShell, there's so many different things happening. I mean, look at this solar punk escape one. This is completely different from what I built. We've got this little honeymoon spot, some little Tudor style buildings. I mean, there's just so many different things that you can do. Oh my gosh, you made a rec center? Oh, that's so cool. See? How did you manage to make a rec center with this tiny build? I love how much exterior space there is. That's really impressive. Well, there, if you're interested in trying to build this, you can grab this shell off my gallery, and then when you're done, upload it with the hashtag #SimsieLilShell so I can see. And just in case any of you don't have access to the gallery, take a screenshot of this with the grid so you can try and recreate it in your game. I know some people tried to do it in The Sims 3. They like took this and then rebuilt the box and then did it in an older game. So if you do that, please send me a picture because I would love to see it. But on that note, I'm gonna end this video right here. So thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you give this build a shot because I'm really curious to see what you make out of it. And if you want to watch any past shell challenges, I can link some on the end card for you. I just really love shell challenges. I think they're so fun. Good luck building, and I'm gonna catch you all tomorrow. Okay? Bye, everybody. I'm not kidding when I say the only rule is that you can't change those existing walls, by the way. Literally everything else is fair game. You can do anything except touch my walls.